the bark's still on them, over to Osaka Bay, where I saw them this summer piled 3 stories high and buried under the water, being stored for the next generation. And to add insult to injury, you and I, the federal taxpayer, spend $250 million a year building logging roads up to the last inaccessible parts of our national forest so that these cut-and-run timber companies can get up and cut the last of our children's trees. The worst ripoff is mining, hard rock mining. If you're a mining company, and they're almost all foreign-owned, and you find gold or silver on my private land in any of the western states, you're going to pay me on average about a 16% royalty to mine it. What happens if you find those same minerals on our federal lands that you and I own? How much do you think they pay us? 0. They get it all for free. They get the gold, we get the shaft. About 6 years ago, American Varick, a Canadian company, found one of the biggest mother lodes in history, about $10 to $16 billion worth of gold on our federal land in Nevada. They got the whole thing for $5,000. Why did they have to pay $5,000? Because I said it was for free. Well, the law says that not only do they get all the gold below the land for free, but they get to keep all the land above the gold for $2.50 an acre. That's the price that was established by Ulysses Grant in 1879 when he passed the Mining Act. And he wanted to keep the price of land low so that to encourage the dragoon Easterners to go out and risk their necks settling the Indian territories. And these mining companies have such exquisite political clout that they've been able to keep the same price on those minerals for on that land for 130 years. Now, do you think that if any of you got tired of the West Virginia winters and decided that you wanted to move out to sunny Nevada, and you went to the BLM office in Culver City and said, give me some of that federal land for $2.50 an acre, do you think that anybody would sell it to you? No, they would not. It would be against the law. The law says only the mining companies get that deal, but when they're done with it, they can sell it to you, and they sell it on average upwards of $10,000 an acre, because that's the true free market value of the land. And at that point, you probably won't want it anyway, because they've also been able to use their political clout to write themselves waivers to most of the federal environmental laws so that when they leave behind these giant piles of toxic waste tailings that leach arsenic, mercury, and cyanide into our western streams every time it rains. According to the Federal Bureau of Mines, there are now 9,000 miles of western trout streams that have been destroyed through contamination from mining waste by private companies on our public land. In Montana alone, there are 11,000 toxic waste sites by private companies on our public lands. You and I will spend $20 billion over the next 10 years cleaning that up. That's not the free market. The free market says if you want to bring a product to market, you pay the cost of it getting there. And that includes the cost of cleaning up after yourself, which was a lesson we were all supposed to have learned in kindergarten. But what these companies do, like all polluters, is they use political clout to escape the discipline of the free market and force the public to subsidize their costs of production, force the public to subsidize the price of getting their product to market. And it distorts the free market. It injures all of us when they do that. But the kind of pollution that we have in the East is no different. What I experience on the Hudson River, or you experience here in West Virginia, when General Electric decided to dump its toxics into the Hudson River, it was avoiding one of the costs of bringing its product to market, which was the cost of properly disposing of a dangerous processed chemical. When it avoided the cost, it was able to outcompete its competitors and enrich its board and shareholders, but the cost didn't disappear. They went into the fish, and it made the people sick, and it put the men out of work, and it dried up the barge traffic, and it took the land off the tax rolls. And all of those impacts impose costs on the rest of us, on our community, that should, in a true free market system, be reflected in the price of General Electric's product when it makes it to the marketplace. So the consumer then can make a choice about the true cost of that product. And what GE did, which is what all polluters do, is to use chemical ingenuity and political clout to escape the discipline of the free market and force the public to pay the cost of doing business. And when they do that, and what environmental laws are intended to do is to restore the free market. And what I do as an environmental advocate is really, I'm on a free market, patrol. To enforce, our job is to enforce free market capitalism, to force the players and the actors within our communities to pay the true cost of bringing their product to market. Because then the market will work and the goods can be distributed throughout our society with efficiency and democracy. And that's what this is all about. And of course, the people who get hurt the hardest when somebody evades the free market are the poorest members of our society, the most vulnerable communities. In every environmental controversy, from mining to landfills to access to public land, it's always the poor who shoulder the heaviest burden for environmental injury. If you look at where toxics go in this country, they always go to the poor neighborhoods. 4 out of every 5 toxic waste dumps in America is in a black neighborhood. The highest concentration of toxic waste in America is the south side of Chicago. The largest toxic waste dump in America is Emile, Alabama, which is 85% black. The most contaminated zip code in California is East LA. But it's not just the poor who get hurt. And the same thing is true in this state. That it's the poorest communities and those that can least afford to be injured that bear the burden of having their environments destroyed and having really all of their prospects for future economic development taken by some of the activities that bring immediate cash to a few players today. One of the, it's not just the poor who get hurt, it's all of us, because we own these resources. That's what the law says. The rivers and streams and the fishes of West Virginia are owned not by the governor or the fisheries department or the mining industry. They're owned by the people of the state. That's what the law says. That's what the Constitution says. And that's true in all of the states. And this is ancient law. It goes back to Roman times, the dawn of Western law, which says the public trust assets. The Code of Justinian said this, the public trust assets, and those things that are not susceptible to private ownership, the air that we breathe, the running water, the beach lands, the dune lands, the subsurface water and the wetlands, the wandering animals and the fisheries, those things are owned by all of the people. Everybody has a right to use them. Nobody can use them in a way that diminishes or injures their use and enjoyment by others. If you were a citizen of Rome, whether you were rich or poor, white or black, humble or noble, you had an absolute right to cross a beach and go and take fish. And with a net or however you wanted to, the emperor himself couldn't stop you. The emperor did not have a right to sell monopolies to the fisheries. I'll give you a quick history lesson. When Roman law broke down in Europe during the Dark Ages, the feudal lords and kings began reasserting control over the public trust assets. For example, King John in England said that the public no longer owns the deer. They belong to royalty and to the nobility alone, and that's what got him in trouble with Robin Hood. He also began erecting toll booths on the navigational streams like the Thames and selling monopolies to the fisheries. This triggered a revolt. The public and the barons confronted him at Runnymede and forced him to sign the Magna Carta, which was the Bill of Rights, which is the genesis of our Bill of Rights, and it has all of our Bill of Rights in it, plus 2 additional rights, chapters, one on free fisheries and the other on free access to navigation. And when we had the revolution in this country, those rights descended to the people of the states, and they're in the Constitution of all 50 states. The public owns the waterways. We own the fisheries. It's, whether you're rich or poor, every child in Charleston, black or white, has a right to go down to this river and pull out a fish and bring it home to his family and feed it to them with the security that he's not going to poison them, or to the Coal River, or to the New or the Galley or any of the other rivers in the state. But that right has been taken away from the people of the state. And you know, in the Hudson River, the people back in the 60s who assembled in this American Legion Hall were not sophisticated people. They probably didn't talk much about the Code of Justinian or the Magna Carta, but they were smart, and they understood that they owned the fish, that the Constitution said that they owned the fish, and they said to themselves, the Constitution says we own these, but we don't own them anymore. General Electric took them away from us. They liquidated this resource for cash, and they left. And they stole it from us without due process. And that's an act of theft, and these people have to be treated as thieves, and they began hauling them off to court, and lo and behold, winning their cases. And they not only succeeded in restoring the Hudson, but they